Hi guys, welcome back, and hello if you are new. I hope all of you have had a fantastic week so far. So I'm delving back into the annals for the last time of February this month. Following a career high and arguably, I would say, their most commercially accessible album to date, that was Sacrament, Lamb of God very much decided to adopt a totally different approach on album number 6, which I cannot believe is celebrating 15 years this year, in the form of Wrath.
Somewhere you find and ask your way.
I guess the first kind of thing that I wanted to say is that it's kind of like Sacrament, but not. Overall, the record really does kind of stand on its own 2 feet, and that's what I think makes it so important in Lamb of God's catalogue. And I think the biggest one for me is the fact that there's a real sense of the progressive on this record. You know, you've got the introduction of the album, which is The Passing, which is this sort of like really quite triumphant intro into In Your Words, which, you know, as a track, I think really kind of, you know, the two put together is almost like 7 minutes, really, right? And the final section of In Your Words almost kind of, for me, reminded me of that ending section of Ghost Reveries, you know, where it kind of really elevates you. And I think this is something that we hadn't seen at all from Lamb of God up until then. I think In Your Words also has one of my favourite bass lines from John Campbell, you know, like the drums are also absolutely brilliant. And this is literally the second track off of the album. And then you've got tracks like, you know, Grace, for example, which is incredibly fluid, like the whole way through. I think that's another big testament to, you know, Lamb of God, is their songwriting on this record is brilliant. But again, you know, Grace in particular, I think leans more into that progressive idea. There's also, you know, like nods to the Ashes of the Wake kind of stuff, like Contractor, for example, which kind of, you know, kind of grinds to a halt and has this like big sludgy style riff before we get there. Moment, which I think is one of my favourite Randy Blythe screams he's ever done. Honestly, I remember the first time hearing that when I was like, I don't know, 17 or however old I would be. Like one of the craziest screams I've ever heard. I also think that on this album, the band really wanted to embrace that idea of imperfection and kind of like what that might sound like. I think you can hear those sort of like little sections that remind you that these people are real players. And, you know, like simple things like the woo at the beginning of Contractor, I always really love. And I think that this record is, you know, fiercely technical. Everything to Nothing, Choke Sermon. I think these are tracks, you know, that wouldn't sit out of place on Ashes of the Wake in terms of like how demanding they are to play. And Wrath also, I think, has some really great kind of like bouncy riffs, you know, like Dead Seeds, Fake Messiah, you know, they're great examples. And I have to say, you know, a special shout out for We Die Alone and The Shoulder of Your God. Like that final track is absolutely brilliant. And I think it's the perfect album closer, really. And it's the only way I can listen to the album with those like special edition tracks, because I think they are just absolutely brilliant. But of course, you know, like, despite it having more of a melodic kind of standpoint and it being a bit more progressive, it's still scathingly vicious, you know, like Set to Fail, for example, you know, that and then the like crazy, almost like blasty sort of drums. And I think where production is concerned, you know, the band opted for something that was a bit less sterile than we kind of heard on Sacrament. And again, you know, heightens that sense of like these being real players. The snare of the drums, you know, I think has that sort of raw sense to it. But I think guitar tone, like, you know, you can see it on Everything to Nothing, is a bit more kind of, it's like wooden. I don't know, it's a hard sort of way to describe it, but it just feels weighty. And it's also, I think, important to note that this is the first album to feature Josh Wilbur, who has gone on to produce, I think, every single Lamb of God record since Wrath. Also, a special mention for Mark Morton's soloing, you know. I think the band, and obviously Willie Adler, but like, I think that it really showcased that, of course, they can be as devastating as they are with the riffs, but there's also a real sense of soul behind the lead work. Like, I remember the first time hearing Set to Fail's lead was really quite bluesy, and had quite a lot of emotion behind it. But then Grace, you know, is a lot more kind of melodic, and I think there's interesting kind of use of like sweeping arpeggios and all that sort of stuff. And it really quite surprised me because I didn't think that they were this kind of band, you know. And of course, you know, I can't talk about Lamb of God and not talk about the drums, you know. Shoulder of Your God is incredible. The way that Chris Adler can kind of change those grooves. And then you've also got Set to Fail, which is just such a like massive Pantera style, you know, huge groove. Wrath for me, I think, is the album where it combined their power, technicality and groove of their earlier years, but by pushing their songwriting forward and, you know, exploring newer avenues where it comes to melody and the idea of kind of progressing a song even more. And the result is an album that I think stands very, very much atop with the band at some of their finest moments in their career. So happy birthday, Wrath. Absolutely amazing album. Let me know what you think in the comments underneath me. Thank you so much for checking out another Apocalyptic Anniversaries. I always love doing these little sort of throwback videos, and let me know what some of your best memories are with Wrath. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you did enjoy it, it'd be great if you could hit that like and subscribe button and share to any of your friends that you think might be a fan of Lamb of God or just some metal in general. And I will see you guys very, very soon for another album review and Apocalyptic Anniversaries. Take care.